My personal experience, I think, is very reflective of what a prospective candidate would have to go through in order to acquire a business. I'm intimately familiar with the challenges that are associated with getting capital, getting credit established in the United States, how to go about navigating the banking system, navigating all of the necessary documentation that's required, given that the candidate's not a U.S. citizen, all of the challenges associated with documenting for employees and getting all of the necessary pieces in place for payroll and for establishing all of that kind of stuff.
Patrick Findoro here, co-founder at Visa Franchise. Greg Halton, CEO and president of Corporate Caterers. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me, Patrick.
So you kind of have a unique perspective in terms of playing different roles, wearing different hats, becoming CEO, president of a major franchise brand in your segment. Could you tell us a little bit about your trajectory, Greg?
Sure, Patrick. So prior to Corporate Caterers, I ran a business in Canada called Event Rental Group, which was the largest party and event rental company. We used to rent equipment to event planners and primarily caterers throughout primarily Toronto, Ontario, and to a small degree all over Canada. So I had a very intimate knowledge of the catering industry and particularly the special events industry prior to coming on board at Corporate Caterers. And what intrigued me most about Corporate Caterers when I arrived was that it was a business that was essentially the opposite of the kind of catering that took place in my previous life, since previously it was all social catering and Corporate Caterers operated purely as a B2B in a corporate or office type setting. As we like to say at Corporate Caterers, the hours were more banker friendly. It was
hours, and then how about the clients? Are the clients a little easier to deal with?
Clients were much easier, exactly. Not as much social pressure and not as much
first time party planners.
Correct. Didn't have the demands of as we used to say there, in orders of magnitude. It came heart surgery followed closely by I'm having a party.
You came down. How did you come? If you don't mind sharing, how did you come down from Canada? What was your visa status and everything?
Interestingly enough, I arrived in Miami, where our head office is, on an E-2 visa. So I made an investment alongside a private equity fund to acquire Corporate Caterers in 2017, and arrived with my family on an E-2 visa. So very, very familiar with the E-2 visa process.
Very cool. Could you tell a little bit more about what your company does and especially what the franchisees do, owning and running a Corporate Caterers franchise?
Sure. So the business was founded in 1997 by two gentlemen in Miami that had worked in the events industry for a good portion of their lives. They had fundamentally arrived at the conclusion that they were burnt out and tired by the demands of that particular industry, but really liked the energy that kitchens and catering provided. And so they started up Corporate Caterers as I said earlier, strictly as a business-to-business office catering company, whose clients included, hospitals, higher education institutions, and of course corporate boardrooms or any corporate event that was taking place where the company wanted to have an elevated lunch meeting for their clients. And so the business started in 1997 in Miami. They opened up a second location in 2002 in Boca, and then began franchising 5 years after that in 2007. Sold locations all throughout Florida, and then in 2011 began expanding into the Texas market. We currently have 6 locations in Texas, and then from there expanded all over the U.S. And I came on board the business in the two founders by 2017. They'd been doing it for almost 20 years. They had sort of reached it was your classic owner situation where the owners had sort of reached had plateaued in terms of what they were capable of or at least what they thought they were capable of doing, and were looking for new leadership to take the business to the next level. And so that's how I got involved.
What are some of the changes that you have implemented in the last 7 years, especially to benefit the existing franchisees and new franchisees coming on board?
The business has an interesting story for the past few years, of course, because in 2017 when I arrived, the first thing I did was what I like to term professionalize the business. We took it from a mom and pop type owner mentality to a much more professional organization. I put a lot of emphasis on making sure the business was correctly branded, spent a lot of time and money improving the brand of the business, since at the end of the day, when we're selling franchises, and for our franchisees, their main benefit, of course, lies in the value of the brand. So we did a lot of branding work at the outset, professionalized the way in which the business not only sold franchises, but operated franchises. We improved the way in which we communicated with our franchisees. In fact, we don't refer to our franchisees by that name. We call our franchisees affiliates. So we immediately began referring to all our franchisees as affiliates because we consider them our partners. Yeah. One of the main emphasis I put on the business from the outset was that I wanted to treat our affiliates like they were our customers, as opposed to customers and partners, rather than viewing them as people that had purchased a license from our business. And so we tried very hard to integrate them much more into our overall strategy and overall operation. And that, of course, was going along great. We were as a result of all those processes, we were selling way more franchises than we ever had in the past.
2017 to 2020?
2017 to 2020 everything was great. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and I would argue there were few businesses in the world, maybe cruise lines or
You
something
guys are
along
up
those
there.
lines. We're right up there. So,
And you see the sandwich shops, like a lot of like the Jimmy John's closed because they were operating right next to an office space where
exactly. So it was a very, very challenging period from 2020 till the pandemic sort of subsided a bit. We were fortunate in our particular business. We were fortunate that we were quite concentrated in Florida and in Texas, which were states that were a little more open than perhaps some of our other locations. But our affiliates had a really tough time in the pandemic. It was a very, very challenging time for the business. The one thing I will say is that the Corporate Caterers model turned out to be very adaptable under the circumstances. We pivoted very quickly to individually packaged meals. We came up with a system that allowed us to continue to do our elevated style of business in an individually packaged format. And we were able to downsize our operations in such a way that most of our franchisees survived. We lost a few in the process, but most of them were able to survive despite the very challenging circumstances. And I should have said this earlier, Patrick. Maybe I could just throw this out there as well. I should have said this earlier that one of the things that makes Corporate Caterers unique is that we're not just a catering company. We arrive on site. We set our food up in a wonderfully displayed buffet style setting with all of the equipment needed for an office manager to be essentially hands free and hands off in terms of getting the product delivered and clients fed. And we come back afterwards and we clean it all up, take it all away. We often pack up leftovers, put them in the fridge
Nice.
for people to take home at night. So it's really a full service white glove type service that's a little different from when you order from Uber Eats and the Uber Eats driver drops it off at the
40
front in a
minutes
brown paper
late,
bag.
there's an issue,
Exactly.
can't find the door.
Yeah, everything with us comes. We employ our own delivery drivers, so they often know locations intimately. They know exactly where they're going. They often have very, very good relationships with clients, so everyone's excited to see when Corporate Caterers arrives. We're very well known for our chips, and so everyone's excited when the chip guys arrive, which is awesome. And so, having said that, I bring that up only in that in the pandemic we had to pivot quickly to a style that allowed us to continue to have that kind of style and that kind of service, but addressing the pandemic related issues. And then, of course, now that the pandemic has subsided, we're seeing very, very nice growth again in our regular service and our regular business.
Well, people are meeting less frequently at the office. Like I have a lot of friends in Miami that will go to the office twice a week, but there's always
Correct.
meals provided. Where in the
Correct.
past it would be like once a month there would
Right.
be meals provided.
Right, exactly. We're seeing obviously a decline in business in terms of the office, quote unquote, office meeting, but certainly a much larger increase in the amount of employee related meals that our business is feeding. So companies are working very hard to keep employees excited to come to the office, wanting to spend time in the office, and serving food is a good way to do that.
Greg, how much are we talking about for someone to open up a Corporate Caterers?
It varies depending on where you're located and what kind of kitchen space you're looking for. So just to give a ballpark number, give or take between $200,000 and $250,000. It includes at least 90 to 120 days of working capital in that number, and that should be enough to get you up and running and get the business started and sort of operating efficiently. What we do is we go into typically locations that were formerly restaurants that were not necessarily in the best location for a restaurant. Since we have no incoming traffic, all of our customers are being delivered to, as opposed to having any incoming customer base. We don't need to be anywhere where there's high traffic or good signage or anything like that. So we typically search for kitchens that have failed because of the location, but have good space and good equipment in them. A new affiliate opening up a Corporate Caterers can save a fair bit of money by finding a good lease and somewhere that has some existing equipment. That can easily help reduce the cost of opening up your initial commissary.
I imagine you're pretty hands-on with that. Do you have like a nationwide broker you work with or local brokers to source those second-gen locations?
Yes, we do. We work with all kinds of real estate brokers across the country, and we're very, very hands-on. Our team is, with our affiliates every step of the way.
So, that's one thing on the bottom line, the cost, but how on the, getting that initial revenue, the initial clients, how does corporate help the affiliates get that initial money and try to break even as soon as possible?
Yes. So one of the things that I would say is a challenge for prospective clients looking to buy a franchise. Corporate Caterers is not a stick a sign in the ground and clients will walk through the front door type of business. The most challenging aspect of a Corporate Caterers franchise is finding and acquiring clients and getting sales.
Selling.
So when we're considering whether or not a candidate is the right prospective franchisee for our business, we work very hard to make sure they understand the urgency and the need for getting sales. So,
Yes.
we often have new franchisees that say, "I've got to hire a cook because I need someone that's going to help me make the food." And we always say, "The cooking
No.
you get there's no one to cook for if you don't have sales." So, what are some of the things we do? Well, there's a number of online platforms that are available to help generate day one sales. So, we use a lot of these online aggregators that are able to generate day one sales. We have a very, very detailed marketing plan that's run by our vice president of sales, who's very, very hands-on with all new affiliates. It details how to prospect for clients. We include scripts. We include a ton of marketing material. Like I said, the business has been very, very well branded. We've got tons of, we've got an award-winning first-class website that helps generate sales. And so we do all of those things in a very, very hands-on way. We will, a lot of franchisors sort of limit the amount of time they spend with a new franchisee. In the franchise document, in the franchise disclosure document, we'll say, you're 1 or 2 weeks, et cetera.
Yeah.
We will spend an unlimited amount of time with a new affiliate to get them started. If it takes us 4 weeks or 6 weeks to help them get where they need to be, we're happy to do it.
And what's the training look like? Do they come on site here in Miami? Does someone
Yes.
go to their on site for their new kitchen?
We do both. So we have all prospective affiliates come spend some time with us in Miami. We also do training at our Boca location, which is a little more. Our Miami kitchen is our largest. It's our flagship. So we do some training at the Miami kitchen, but it can be a little overwhelming because it's so large. So we do some training in our Boca location, which is a little more reflective of what a new affiliate's a kitchen might look like. And then, of course, we're on site before and after opening.
And Greg, when the affiliate's up and running, it's been 3, 4, 5 years. What does the infrastructure look like? Have they opened up a second location? What's the headcount look like?
Yeah. So typically, most of our affiliates, we give out very, very large territories. Unless you're in a major city, most of the territories we sell, our Corporate Caterers affiliate will be the only Corporate Caterers location in that city.
Great.
So we've had a couple of affiliates open up second locations. For example, we have an affiliate that has one location that was very successful in Austin, Texas. They have a second location in San Antonio. So that would be a good example of two relatively large cities that each have one Corporate Caterers location. But most affiliates there's enough business out there that when they have their one location, they've got their hands full. One location can support millions of dollars of sales.
And besides you, have there been any other U.S. immigrants part of the Corporate Caterers team, whether on the affiliate level or on the corporate level?
There has. It was before my time. We haven't had anyone since I came on board that went through the E-2 visa process. But it is a business that's well suited to the E-2 visa process.
What are some of the ways that you especially can help these newcomers to the U.S. beyond the extensive training and the empathy, and you haven't been through the E-2 visa process yourself?
Yes. Well, I would say the most important thing we can do is we can offer we can offer shared experiences. I mean, in particular, my personal experience I think is very reflective of what a prospective candidate would have to go through in order to acquire a business. Now, we were buying the entire business, so it was a little more complex. But I'm intimately familiar with the challenges that are associated with getting capital, getting credit established in the United States, how to go about navigating the banking system, navigating all of the necessary documentation that's required. Given that the candidate's not a U.S. citizen, all of the challenges associated with documenting for employees and getting all of the necessary pieces in place for payroll and for establishing all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we have a pretty good understanding of what's
You've
involved.
done it at a much more complex level because
Yes,
you're at the corporate
yes.
level doing this compared to the affiliates.
Correct.
I do get asked a lot because there are quite a few Canadians that maybe they don't have 250 to open, but they have 150.
Yes.
And I know, establishing credit once you're here and after a year being able to get credit, but are you aware of any programs for Canadians that want to move down here that are able to get some financing?
I think the best way to answer, Patrick, would be I think there's lots of there's lots of companies in the States that are willing to provide financing on a creative level, on a creative basis. That's how I did it. We weren't able to get traditional, I was not eligible to take an SBA loan.
Yeah.
Right, so which is the traditional method. You know, a lot of our affiliates, when we sell franchises, a lot of our affiliates you simply get an SBA loan. I had to do it through what's called mezzanine financing, or a second tier financing, and private debt is becoming a more and more common source of capital. I'm not familiar with any one company in particular, but we do work with a number of financing companies. Whenever we have affiliates coming on board, we work with financing companies, and all of whom are willing to be creative in terms of helping get financing in place outside of the traditional SBA route.
Greg, can you think of any other items that we didn't go through today that might be relevant to someone that is exploring this industry, or specifically a corporate caterers franchise?
You know, I think one of the common misperceptions about corporate caterers is that you have to be passionate about food in order to be in the food industry. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have zero knowledge of the food industry when I came on board. I had a very good sense for business, and I understood the catering industry in terms of the necessary requirements for service and of course for quality. But I'm not a chef by any stretch, and I rely on my team to be able to assist with menu development, all that kind of stuff. So anyone considering a corporate caterers franchise, or a food industry franchise for that matter, I think there are certain considerations that have to be taken into for food, but we're not one of them. We're looking for people that are fundamentally entrepreneurial. As I said earlier, it's a business that requires a strong sense of sales responsibility. The business itself is quite easy to operate, and it's not a particularly complex industry. There's not a lot of technology that needs to be adapted. It's a relatively simple business to be in. We, of course, provide a very, very solid technology package as part of your when you become part of the Corporate Caterers family. We have a very good operating system that comes along with your franchise. But you don't necessarily need to be particularly good at cooking or passionate about food. You have to be passionate about business, and you have to be entrepreneurial. That's really what we're looking for. The other thing that I would say is that a lot of people that look at these kinds of businesses often are looking at restaurants, and I would say that the restaurant industry is very, very different. And I can't speak to it. I haven't spent any time in the restaurant industry, but I know from experience and from colleagues I've spoken to that the restaurant industry is very, very different from the corporate caterers business. I mean, catering is often tacked on to a restaurant as supplemental or ancillary revenue. We don't operate that way. We're strictly doing catering, and we're strictly doing business to business catering, as we like to say. It's no evenings, no weekends, and no social events. So it's very, very different from someone considering a life in a restaurant industry. So I would say that would be something that a potential candidate would want to take into consideration as well.
And I've seen firsthand that some people with the restaurant experience, owning and operating multiple restaurants, later in their career, 50s, 60s, they move into the catering space for less up and downs and better control of their hours.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Greg, I really appreciate you taking the time to connect. For those that are still in the investigation phase, what's the best way to learn more about corporate caterers?
Yes, Patrick, thank you. I would recommend going to corporatecaterers.com. Corporate caterers with it. That's ERERS.com.
Perfect. Greg, thanks so much again.
Thank you, Patrick.